The American dream promises homeownership to anyone willing to work for it. Sugar Ray Robinson has worked harder than most world champion multiple times over. Millionaire athlete, cultural icon. But when he walks into Morrison Real Estate with his wife to buy their dream house in Detroit's prestigious Rosedale Park, agent William Morrison takes one look and declares this area isn't right for your type. What happens in the next 4 hours doesn't just challenge housing discrimination. It exposes how the American dream gets rationed by race, not merit. Morrison Real Estate occupies a corner building on Grand River Avenue, its plate glass windows displaying photographs of elegant homes with manicured lawns and tree-lined streets. Inside, polished wood desks and leather chairs create an atmosphere of prosperity and respectability. This is where Detroit's rising middle class comes to purchase their piece of the American dream, where your housing options get determined not by your income or credit rating, but by skin color calculations that masquerade as neighborhood compatibility. Robinson enters the office holding his wife Edna's hand, both dressed impeccably for this important occasion. He wears a charcoal gray suit, Italian leather shoes, gold watch that catches the afternoon sunlight. She wears a navy blue dress with pearl accessories, her hair perfectly styled, carrying a leather purse that costs more than most people's monthly salary. They look like exactly what they are, successful Americans ready to invest in their future. Behind them, their financial documentation tells an extraordinary success story. Bank statements showing 7-figure balances, investment portfolios diversified across multiple industries, property holdings in 3 states, credit rating that banks would kill for, income streams that make them wealthy by any reasonable standard. They represent the American dream achieved through talent, determination, and hard work. But William Morrison sees none of their achievements when they walk through his door. 45 years old, 20 years selling real estate in Detroit, expert at maintaining property values through careful client selection. He sees only the complication their presence represents to his established business model. In Morrison's mind, successful real estate practice requires understanding community dynamics, neighborhood stability, property value protection. These considerations transcend individual qualifications and focus on broader social compatibility that ensures existing residents remain comfortable with new neighbors. "Good afternoon," Robinson says politely, approaching Morrison's desk. "We're interested in purchasing a home in Rosedale Park. We've been pre-qualified for financing and have specific property requirements." Morrison examines the couple before him. Obviously wealthy, obviously educated, obviously successful by conventional measurements. But success doesn't eliminate the fundamental challenge their presence creates for neighborhood integration. Can you imagine Robinson's optimism in this moment, walking into a real estate office as a qualified buyer, expecting to be treated like any other successful American family seeking homeownership? "Rosedale Park," Morrison repeats slowly, as if testing the words. "That's a very exclusive neighborhood. Established community with particular standards and expectations." Particular standards, the euphemism that transforms racial exclusion into quality control. "We understand it's exclusive," Edna responds. "That's exactly why we're interested. We want the best schools for our children, safe streets, well-maintained properties. We're prepared to pay premium prices for premium neighborhoods." Morrison studies their expensive clothing, their obvious wealth, their articulate presentation. Under normal circumstances, they would represent ideal clients, financially qualified, motivated buyers seeking high-end properties. But these aren't normal circumstances. Picture the internal calculation Morrison is making. Wealthy black clients versus white neighborhood expectations, individual qualifications versus community resistance, commission potential versus social complications. "Mr. and Mrs. Robinson," Morrison says carefully, "Rosedale Park serves a specific demographic, families with shared values and lifestyle preferences. You might find better community fit in areas more aligned with your cultural background." Cultural background, community fit, the language that makes segregation sound like voluntary lifestyle choice instead of systematic exclusion. But what Morrison doesn't realize is that he's not just selling houses, he's controlling access to the American dream based on assumptions about race, rather than evidence about character or capability. Robinson pulls out his financial documentation, bank statements, investment summaries, credit reports, employment verification, documentation that would impress any legitimate real estate professional. "Mr. Morrison," Robinson says calmly, "perhaps you should review our qualifications before making assumptions about community fit. We're prepared to purchase immediately. Cash offer, no financing contingencies. Cash offer, no financing delays, no approval complications. The dream scenario for any real estate agent working on commission." Morrison examines the financial documents reluctantly. 7-figure net worth, multiple income streams, credit score approaching perfect, investment portfolio showing sophisticated financial management. By every objective measure, the Robinsons represent ideal homebuyers. Can you feel the tension building in that real estate office? Perfect qualifications meeting institutional barriers that have nothing to do with ability to buy or maintain property. Your financial position is certainly impressive, Morrison acknowledges, but homeownership involves more than individual qualifications. There are community considerations, neighborhood dynamics, social integration challenges that affect property values for all residents. Social integration challenges. The suggestion that diversity threatens property values rather than enhancing community strength. What specific integration challenges? Robinson asked directly. Are you suggesting that our presence would somehow diminish neighborhood quality? The question forces Morrison to articulate what he's been implying, that black homeownership, regardless of economic status, threatens white neighborhood stability. Mr. Robinson, this isn't personal, it's business reality. Rosedale Park residents have certain expectations about community composition. Rapid demographic changes could affect property appreciation, neighborhood character, social cohesion. Rapid demographic changes, neighborhood character. The coded language that makes racial exclusion sound like market analysis rather than prejudice gatekeeping. This is where everything changes, where individual qualification meets systematic exclusion, where the American dream reveals its limitations based on race rather than achievement. Robinson realizes he's not dealing with legitimate business concerns. He's confronting institutional barriers designed to preserve racial segregation regardless of individual merit. Mr. Morrison, Robinson says, his voice gaining authority, let me clarify something. We're not seeking charity or special accommodation. We're offering to purchase property at full market value, with superior financial credentials. What you're describing isn't business analysis. It's racial discrimination disguised as market concern. The directness catches Morrison off guard. Usually buyers accept explanations about community fit. Look elsewhere for housing. Don't challenge the fundamental assumptions underlying residential segregation. But Robinson continues his argument with devastating logic. You mentioned property values. Have you considered that successful wealthy neighbors might actually enhance property values regardless of race? You mentioned community standards. What standards do we fail to meet other than skin color? You mentioned neighborhood character. What character traits do we lack other than being black? Each question exposes the racial mathematics underlying Morrison's objections, forcing him to defend policies based on prejudice rather than legitimate business considerations. Can you imagine the power of that moral argument echoing through that real estate office? One family demanding equal access to homeownership, based on merit rather than race. Morrison looks desperately toward his office manager for support that doesn't come. Other agents stop their conversations to listen. Clients in the waiting area sense confrontation developing. Mr. Robinson, you're making this more complicated than necessary. There are other neighborhoods, other opportunities, other neighborhoods for black families? Robinson interrupts. Separate housing markets based on race? Is that what you're suggesting? The interruption forces Morrison to confront the segregation system he represents. Usually the system operates invisibly. Black families get steered away from white neighborhoods, without explicit acknowledgement of racial barriers. But Robinson is making the invisible visible, forcing explicit acknowledgement of practices designed to remain hidden. Office manager Patricia Hayes approaches the discussion. 38 years old, 15 years in real estate, expert at managing difficult situations without creating legal liability. Perhaps I can help, Hayes suggests diplomatically. We serve all qualified buyers, but we also provide guidance about community compatibility to ensure successful homeownership experiences. Community compatibility, successful homeownership experiences, more euphemisms for racial steering practices. Ms. Hayes, Robinson responds, we're not seeking guidance about compatibility, we're seeking equal access to properties we're financially qualified to purchase. The compatibility question should be whether we can afford the property, not whether neighbors approve of our race. The response challenges Hayes to defend practices she can't acknowledge publicly. Real estate professionals can't admit to racial discrimination without legal consequences, but they can't deny it without abandoning established business models. But then something unexpected happens. Dr. James Patterson enters the office, 52 years old, prominent white physician looking to sell his Rosedale Park property due to job relocation to California. Patterson overhears the conversation about neighborhood compatibility and community standards. As a medical professional, he recognizes the coded language of systematic discrimination. Excuse me, Patterson interrupts. Are you discussing the Rosedale Park properties? I'm Dr. Patterson, and I'm selling my home at 1247 Rosedale Drive. He looks at Robinson and Edna, noting their obvious success and respectability. Are you the potential buyers? I'd be delighted to have neighbors of your evident quality and achievement. Frankly, the neighborhood needs more families who value education, community investment, and property maintenance. The endorsement from a white homeowner undermines Morrison's arguments about community resistance. Patterson represents exactly the established residents Morrison claims to protect. Can you feel the dramatic shift in that real estate office? A white physician supporting black homeownership, while the real estate agent opposes it. Dr. Patterson, Morrison says carefully, we appreciate your input, but real estate professionals must consider broader market dynamics, long-term property trends. Market dynamics. Patterson interrupts with professional authority. I'm a physician. I understand community health. Diverse, successful neighbors enhance rather than threaten neighborhood stability. What you're describing sounds more like discriminatory practice than market analysis. The medical professional's challenge adds credibility to Robinson's arguments. Patterson's status as established white resident gives him authority Morrison can't dismiss. But Patterson continues his support more forcefully. Mr. Robinson, I've reviewed property records. You're obviously successful, educated, financially responsible. Those are exactly the neighbor characteristics that enhance property values. Anyone who suggests otherwise is either ignorant about real estate economics or motivated by factors that have nothing to do with legitimate business concerns. The endorsement creates alliance between buyer and seller that bypasses agent objections completely. Robinson seizes the opportunity Patterson created. Sure, Dr. Patterson, we're very interested in your property. Would you be willing to discuss direct sale arrangements? Absolutely. Patterson responds immediately. I'll provide complete financial documentation, property inspection reports, neighborhood information. You seem like exactly the family Rosedale Park needs. The direct seller-buyer connection eliminates Morrison's gatekeeping function entirely. Real estate agents can't prevent property owners from selling to qualified buyers they choose. Morrison realizes he's losing control of the situation completely. Patterson's support undermines community resistance arguments. Robinson's qualifications eliminate financial concerns. The direct sale arrangement bypasses agent approval mechanisms. Gentlemen, Morrison tries desperately. Real estate transactions require professional guidance, market analysis, legal documentation, all of which can be handled by attorneys and independent appraisers. Patterson responds. Mr. Robinson, would you like to tour the property this afternoon? I can provide immediate access. The property tour arrangement finalizes the sale process without agent involvement. Morrison's discriminatory gatekeeping becomes irrelevant when property owners choose their buyers directly. What happens next transforms the situation from individual sale to community precedent. Robinson and Patterson tour the Rosedale Park property together. Beautiful 3-story colonial, manicured gardens, 3-car garage, swimming pool, library, children's playrooms, everything the Robinson family dreamed of for their children's future. During the tour, other neighbors notice the interaction. Some watch suspiciously. Others approach with curiosity. Patterson introduces Robinson as his chosen buyer, emphasizing Robinson's achievements and character. The introduction strategy Patterson uses proves crucial. Instead of focusing on race, he emphasizes Robinson's success as world champion, his business acumen, his family values, his commitment to community investment. Several neighbors respond positively. They recognize Robinson's fame and respect his achievements. His celebrity status creates social acceptance that ordinary black families wouldn't receive. But Patterson goes further in building community support. Mr. Robinson, Patterson announces to gathering neighbors, is not just a champion boxer. He's a successful businessman, devoted family man, community investor. Rosedale Park is gaining exactly the kind of neighbor we want. Someone who will enhance our community's reputation and property values. The public endorsement from respected neighborhood resident creates momentum for acceptance rather than resistance. Within 2 hours, the sale agreement is finalized. Robinson purchases Patterson's property for full asking price, cash transaction, immediate occupancy. The American dream achieved despite institutional barriers. But the victory represents more than individual homeownership. It establishes precedent for future black families seeking housing in previously segregated neighborhoods. News of Robinson's successful purchase spreads rapidly through Detroit's black community. If Sugar Ray Robinson can buy in Rosedale Park, other successful families can challenge housing barriers in quality neighborhoods. Real estate agents across Detroit begin receiving inquiries from qualified black buyers seeking homes in integrated neighborhoods. The Robinson precedent makes discrimination harder to maintain. When buyers know resistance can be overcome, progressive white homeowners begin specifically seeking black buyers for their properties. They recognize that diversity enhances rather than threatens neighborhood quality when buyers are financially qualified and community-minded. Federal housing officials take notice of Detroit's integration progress. The Robinson case becomes model for challenging discriminatory practices through individual action supported by progressive community members. Within 2 years, Rosedale Park becomes successfully integrated community. Property values increase rather than decrease. Schools maintain high standards. Community organizations thrive with diverse leadership. The success validates every argument Robinson made about merit-based housing access, demonstrates that racial integration strengthens rather than weakens neighborhoods, when based on qualifications rather than quotas. Robinson understood something powerful that afternoon at Morrison Real Estate. Sometimes the most important fights aren't in boxing rings or courtrooms. They're in everyday business settings where institutional barriers prevent qualified Americans from achieving their dreams. The victory wasn't just about buying one house. It was about proving that the American dream must be available to everyone willing to work for it, regardless of race. That merit-based housing access strengthens communities rather than threatening them. Think about barriers in your community that prevent qualified people from accessing opportunities they've earned. Housing, employment, education, social organizations that claim merit-based selection while maintaining demographic exclusions. Because 4 hours of challenging discriminatory practices can change entire communities forever, can prove that diversity strengthens rather than weakens neighborhoods when based on character and capability rather than race and prejudice. Robinson didn't just buy a house that day. He proved that the American dream belongs to everyone willing to achieve it through hard work, regardless of institutional barriers designed to preserve racial segregation.